Hey, I'm Drew Combs with Spark Media Solutions. I'm here with David Ackert, who's a principal with Practice Boomers. You just wrapped up a talk about motivating reluctant lawyers. Give me a sort of specific scenario, an example of a reluctant lawyer who's been motivated.
Well, sure. We were just working with a lawyer this week who was putting off a blog initiative. So the firm's been pressuring him, come on, you need to write a blog, you need to get on board and do some more business development. And, his pushback was, this is a good idea. I understand the common sense here. But I've got all these institutional clients that are demanding things from me. I've got partners that are breathing down my neck. I'm just concerned that if I carve out a lot of time to start putting out blogs and do it repeatedly, there's going to be all this fallout. The clients are going to be upset. The partners are going to be upset. And so it was a reasonable concern that he had, but at the end of the day he recognized that unless he starts doing something proactive, this isn't somebody who was very social and wanted to go out to mixers, so blogging really was going to be an avenue, a reasonable avenue for him. And unless he started doing something like this, he was just going to stay stuck and always have that excuse of, I don't have time, I'm too busy. So what we ended up doing was helping him really break apart the project into something very small that he can take on right now. Just outline the first one. You don't have to take on the whole thing. And I think that's one of the things that lawyers do. They're very thoughtful. They think down the road. They're thinking about all of the implications of doing this or that, and it can become overcomplicated. You end up with analysis paralysis. So sometimes just breaking apart the task at hand into its simplest next step. Don't worry about the step after that. Just taking the next step, and trust that from that vantage point, the next one will be clear. That's usually the solution.
What are some of the other tools or keys that you use just generally in your practice when it comes to motivating reluctant lawyers?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we just talked about in the talk today was the value of awarding lawyers who have taken some initiative. So let's say the law firm has some new program that they're putting out, and there's a certain group of lawyers that are piloting that particular program. So for instance, in Practice Boomers, we have this business development training program. It has an online component, it has a coaching component, and sometimes we find that with a pilot group of lawyers, there's one or two who really excel in the program. They really take it on. And we really encourage the firm to acknowledge those one or two lawyers, because we do find that lawyers respond to status. The lawyers know which is the lawyer among this group who the managing partner came and gave a pat on the back to, or the managing partner sent out this email that said, Mary's doing a really nice job here. And then all of the other lawyers notice that, and they have a little bit of envy, and it brings a little bit of friendly competition into the game, and that can motivate the rest of the lawyers to step up a little more, because the lawyers that are doing so are getting a meaningful accolade.
Earlier you talked a little bit about, lawyers using time, or you provided the example of a lawyer using time as an excuse. What are some of just the other excuses that you've come across in your practice?
Well, I hesitate to call them excuses, because it demeans really what the lawyer is doing, which is expressing, in their mind, certainly a valid concern. And I think it's really important as we work with lawyers to be able to step into their shoes and say, you know what, your objection is not nonsense. It makes 100% sense. It's just that we're in this era now where we can't give ourselves these reasons for not pursuing business and have that be the end of the story. You've got to find a way around it. So, whether it has to do with I don't have the time, or whether it has to do with the law firm doesn't support this particular initiative, or I'm just not that social, or whatever it is that the lawyer tells themselves. Again, it may be the truth for them, but that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is, where are you going to push yourself, find some way to get around this, so that at the end of the day you're developing business, because now we're at a time where if you're not doing that, there are serious repercussions down the road. 10 years ago, maybe even a little more than that, the whole legal industry was very different. The phone would ring and clients would call, and lawyers could have a book of business just by being good and doing good work for their clients, and those clients would refer others, and it would just sort of naturally progress. They didn't necessarily have to do a lot by way of proactive business development. Businesses would organically form, or business development, books of business would form around them. But I think that with the economic downturn and with this competitive landscape that we're in now, most law firms have adopted this notion that business development is really critical. And it's interesting because we see that the younger lawyers, those associates, are absolutely on board with the program and hungry. They have an appetite for business development. They want to learn how to do these things, and they are eager for these kinds of programs. Whereas some of the older generation, the boomers who really grew up in that culture that you described, where business just came to you and you didn't necessarily have to pursue it, have a little more reluctance, because obviously they're learning a new trick.